Yo, people, hope you're ready for this. We're going to have a special one moving forward. We're going to have a special show today. I hope you are ready. It's going to be a fantastic one. We got Gabrielle, who was experiencing some power problems. So I'm wondering if she's there now. Let's just get it going. Oh, she's back. Oh, she's connecting. She's not connecting. Okay, fantastic. Gabrielle is back.
Hi.
Yo!
You can hear me good?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, very good.
How you doing?
doing? How you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I can't complain.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. The electric. What's going on with the power?
I wish I knew. We've been having these power outages regularly for the last 3 weeks. I listened. They just had a little hearing where they explained to the public what's happening, and it seems based off of their explanations that we're experiencing the perfect storm of events. So we had like a lightning strike the power plant, and then we have some equipment that's like failing, and it seems like everything's going wrong at once. And so I'm trying to give our power company a little bit of grace, because based off of what they've shared with us, they do seem like they're inundated with some unforeseen unfortunate circumstances.
Okay. I mean, I'm sorry that you're having to go through that over there at the moment. Hopefully, can you hear me good?
Yeah.
Hopefully that all those matters get resolved as quickly as possible for you. So first and foremost, let me say, Gabrielle, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this conversation that we're going to have today. We've got so much to talk about, but I want to make sure that I give you the correct and proper introduction. So here we are, speaking to a St. Thomas native, Gabrielle Querrard.
Yes.
I've practiced this, I've practiced the pronunciation. Co-host for Hot Ones, the Caribbean edition. Also historian, I would say, studied historian, and mystic. You are definitely a person that stands for the cause, and you believe fully, from what I gather, fully, and you are unapologetic in your, I would say, in your pursuit of equality, yes, but also making sure that history is maintained, traditions are maintained within not only St. Thomas, not only the Virgin Islands, but a lot of the things that you say actually spread throughout the Caribbean. So we are so thankful for the work that you do, Gabrielle. And I want to say welcome to Rum and Bass platform, but welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Did I miss anything?
I'm so grateful. It was really an honor when you reached out. Like, it was always my intention in my content to, of course, I'm from the Virgin Islands, so I focus a lot on Virgin Islands centered content, but also to find ways that we are connected to our Caribbean brothers and sisters. I think sometimes that's kind of left in the back end of the conversation, right? Is how are we experiencing a lot of the same trials and tribulations, but also a lot of the same strengths. And how can we leverage those strengths to move the region forward in a grand multitude of ways?
Fantastic. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for us here with Rum and Bass as well, that's one of the things that we focus and concentrate on, is but we are doing, bringing the Caribbean together, not just for bacchanal and party and, these types of things, but it's also bringing the Caribbean together on matters that impact us all, things like gentrification, which I know we're going to get there. But all of these things that we look at, and it looks like a blessing initially, and then when you delve a little bit further into it, you realize, oh no, it may not be as much of a blessing as it seems to be on the outskirts or on the outset. So it's very, very important for us to have these conversations and to bring each other together so that we can say, oh, is that going on over in St. Thomas? Right. In Jamaica, this is happening as well. In Trinidad, that's happening as well. We need to figure out a way to address these things. So I wanted to start off by, first and foremost, asking you to do a little bit of a history lesson for the people, to tell us about you, and about what it is that you currently do and so on. But, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure. So my name is Gabrielle Querrard, and I am a multi-generational Virgin Islander. My family has been here since maybe the 1700s, and so I mix up. I have family in a few different Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, and so you've been in the Caribbean region a long. You tend to have a lot of links in a lot of different areas. I make content on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook that is centered around Caribbean affairs, thought pieces, politics, culture, history, and then I do a specified focus into Virgin Islands centered content because that is where I'm from. I also co-host and co-produce a paranormal podcast that features true supernatural stories from the Caribbean. It's called Caribbean Mystics Podcast, and my co-host / co-producer of this is Paulina Creaky. And we are trying to collect stories, of paranormal origin. And this is very important to us because these stories oftentimes die when the caretakers of the stories die. And so if we can digitize as much as we can, then we can ensure that for the foreseeable future, a lot of the stories that shape our region, that shape our belief systems, our spiritual belief systems specifically, as well as the values of our communities, can continue to push forward when we are no longer here. So that's a little bit of what I do. I also am the co-host for Hot Ones Caribbean season 3, which is taking place in the Virgin Islands. They've had 2 prior seasons, so one in Jamaica for season 2 and then one in Trinidad for season 1. And so that's been an incredible experience. And I do a lot of everything. I'm also a manager of a metaphysical store in St. Thomas. So we sell like crystals and books and all things having to do with the occult, spirituality, which is kind of what got my foot in the door for all of this, to be honest.
So first and foremost, congratulations on having your new recording station.
Thank you.
we saw that posted today. So big up hobby and the work, and congratulations on your new station. Now, sorry?
I say you're the first person, I guess, to test it out.
You see, I saw the post today, and I said, "Yo, see the everything's moving in the correct manner, in the correct direction." So let's get to we're gonna do, because you're so because of you as a human being, you have so many different facets. We can deal with some serious stuff, some jokey stuff, some serious stuff, and some jokey stuff, which I love. We're all onions and we all have different layers. So let's kick it off by talking about plantations. One of the posts that you made a little while ago, you spoke about how tourists use sugar plantations as, this picturesque place to come and take pictures of, or have weddings at, when they're not necessarily tied culturally or ancestrally to those plantations or to that island, in fact. And you said something that was so powerful. You said a lot of people like the Caribbean, but they love the Caribbean, but they don't love the Caribbean people. And I really felt that, because that goes across obviously all of the Caribbean. All of us have, plantations and so on. And I never really thought about it that deeply. And maybe that's because I'm culturally and heritage, etc., so tied into it. So I'm not thinking in that regard. But yeah, I don't want to do too much talking. I want you to kind of explain your thought pattern on that. But I think that was such a powerful statement, and we need to explore that. So I'll put the floor to you.
Of course. So that particular video was very near and dear to my heart, because I'm a part of a lot of the like Facebook groups, right? So you'll have all of these like touristy Facebook groups where the tourists will come and they'll ask questions, or you'll see them post photos of their trip. And I am not against tourism. Like, I just want to be really clear about that. But I think that for so long, our Caribbean product has been pushing tourism that's centered around the daiquiris and the rum and the partying and the picturesque beaches and the, rolling hillsides. And I think we have encouraged anyone and everybody to come here. And I personally feel like the Caribbean is sacred land. And I think that we need to steward it as such, because there's been so many, first and foremost, a lot of bloodshed has happened here, but there's also been so many points of liberation and human progression that has taken place here, that I think it's a space that should be honored. And so it's very hard, I would say, for me to see most of our local people don't do big soirees and parties in our local sugar mills, because we see it for what it is. Like, this is land that people have died on. This is land where there was monumental suffering and torture that happened on this land. And so when we look at it, our relationship with it, because we understand our history, and in a lot of ways we see how that history continues to ripple outward, it's very hard to see people come here to visit and the history they may know, but it completely bypasses them. And so they look at a sugar mill and they think, oh my God, like, what a great place for me to have a wedding or to throw my child's birthday party in. And they don't consider that these spaces are sacred land. They don't appreciate the fact that the relationship we have with these sugar mills and what they symbolize, which isn't just, reminders of slavery, but also reminders of our capacity to fight for our freedom in a conglomeration of ways. It's connection to ancestors. There's a lot, and I think that if you're going to travel to a place, it's one, very important that you do the legwork of the research of the space so you can understand the context in which the community that you're visiting exists in. But I also think it's important to really consider, like, the decisions that are made, especially when you look at a sugar mill. Like, there's nothing about the history of a sugar mill, to me, that should denote that this is a fabulous place for a wedding. And I don't know that this conversation can happen in a vacuum, because I see people getting married on the plantations and in the America South. And it's a lot of the same conversations of like, yeah, like, aesthetically, like, it may have this like beautiful colonial architecture and all the things, but we can't continue to bypass the history of these spaces and what they mean to the local population. And further than that, when you have events there like weddings and children's birthday parties and blah, 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 there's a certain eroding that happens of the actual physical structure, because you have people walking up and down the steps, taking pictures, children playing around the rocks and pulling rocks and whatever is loose off of the buildings. And so in the Virgin Islands, we have a lot of places that where our sugar mills are you're seeing the dilapidation take place, and we are on an ongoing effort trying to revitalize and preserve what we can. But really and truly, when these structures fall apart, they gone. And these structures are so important to us and they symbolize so much to us, and it would be nicer to see the people that visit here have a lot more care and consideration to what these places mean for the people. And as it relates to my sentiment around, a lot of people love Caribbean culture but don't love Caribbean people, I think that particular example really showcases that. But there are other ways in which we see people move here every day to the Virgin Islands, and they don't necessarily care to be in a local community, but they want to be around Caribbean culture. So they like to be there for carnival, they like to be there during the parades, they like to be there in the Juve. But when it comes to actually like immersing themselves in a community and ensuring that their children are immersed in the community, you don't see that. They come here, they buy land, they create smaller communities that exclude the local population, and they exist amongst each other without there being any consideration of, well, when you move to a community, you're supposed to want to be a part of the community because the community already exists here and you are an outsider.
That's very that's very strong, and the question that I would have on that, or in that regard as well, and big up to Sidel who sent in a comment, we'll kind of touch on that in a second. I do have a question. And the question really is, do you then think, because you said, they kind of know the history, but it's almost not sacred to them.
Yeah.
So it's a case of, if you knew, just to use a mad example, if somewhere was a place where, I suppose a house or a building where they tortured animals, let's say, but it was a beautiful building, people wouldn't, they'd say, oh no, I don't want to be associated there, I don't want to go and get married there. Does that then indicate, or is that some form of indicator to say they're not really considering the lives that were lost there, that doesn't really matter? Or are we just, making a mountain out of a molehill in that regard, and it was centuries ago? The type of thing that you normally hear, right? It was centuries ago. What, it's a new, so is it just that our lives just didn't really matter in that regard? Or is it not that deep for people that want to go and get married? That's the question I would ask you.
I think it could be both, to be honest. Like, I think that when we hear about slavery, right, if you're not from here in this region of the world where slavery was very pervasive, if you were, coming from a place like Oregon, where, yes, there are facets of slavery that existed and you could kind of see ripple effects there, but it's not so pervasive in the history, I think it's really easy for you to evade it. It's really easy for you to bypass it, sidestep it. And I think in a lot of ways it makes people uncomfortable. But the thing is that the effects of slavery continue to play out in the Caribbean region. So yeah, slavery was abolished in the Virgin Islands in 1848, but we continue to see how slavery continues to, and the effects of it, the byproducts of it, continue to exist in our family structures, in our relationships with each other, in our relationships with our children. So or even with our spirituality, like in a lot of places, African spirituality like Obia and Voodoo and Santeria are very much, like demonized and villainized. And that is a byproduct of slavery. Like directly, it is a byproduct of slavery and the introduction of Christianity to the region. And a lot of the ways that, Christianity was weaponized against the people that was here. And so for us who live in this part of the world, who continue to experience those ripple effects, who continue to be harmed by the ripple effects, and who are actively working to heal from the ripple effects, heal our family structures, heal our mindset, it's really hard to see people, bypass it. And, they basically want you to get over it. It's very hard when we literally still, specifically in the Virgin Islands, we exist as a colony. We were purchased by the United States from Denmark, and Virgin Islanders have never had our say in their own destiny. We've never been able to self-determine our destinies, and so, which is a byproduct again of slavery. Because
you guys don't have a constitution or anything at the moment, do you? You're still fighting for that?
So we're still fighting for it. We're still working on crafting something that I think everybody can agree with. But the part of the Constitution is that even if we were to sit down and devise a constitution that our local people stand by, we still have to get it approved by Congress. And so again, we circle the block on the fact that, again, we don't really get a chance to self-determine unless our colonial hegemony of the United States wills that into existence. We still have to ask permission in a lot of ways. And so it's different, I guess, here in the Virgin Islands. But I see the ripple effects of slavery outward in the larger region, even those that have experienced their own independence. And when you look at colonialism, we have a lot of neocolonialism taking place in the region now. That was, again, hot and heavy during the times of slavery. But when you look at the way that, for instance, China has infiltrated the region and has made a lot of deals that I don't know are thoughtful of the local population, and a lot of ways that they've leveraged their own power as a larger country with a lot of resources and all the things, we see colonialism in a more modern context play out itself continuously in the region. And so for Caribbean people, for West Indians, when we look at our sugar mills, that will always be sacred for us in a lot of ways, but it's not something that we can get over right now, I don't think.
Mhm. You mentioned colonialism, and you mentioned how what colonialism looks like right now. And in fact, today I was reading something that was talking about, modern day colonialism and what it looks like. It's not coming and whipping you and putting you in chains and taking you across the world, but it still exists in the form of whether it be power in the form of money and finance and that type of thing, and investing and so on. I want to talk about something you mentioned before as well, not in this post, but in another post. You mentioned Willie Lynch, and the fact that they brought him to the Americas from the West Indies, and mind control, and how this whole the impact of, it's also colonialism, but it's also slavery, and it's also control and mind control. Because one of the things I want to speak about a little bit later on is how we talk about generational wealth, and how the family structures and passing things down throughout the family and having those links and those bonds are impacted. But before we can get there, I want to just walk through the whole Willie Lynch, I suppose, Willie Lynch's history from the West Indies to the Americas, and what they did to break down the bonds between the families.
Sure. So I'll begin this by saying that after making that post, I ended up getting a lot of information in addition to the Willie Lynch story that basically indicated that the story of Willie Lynch may be something that was made up. It may not
Okay.
have true connections in the way that the story is told, but I do think the energy of it exists, right? And the notion of using various means to control people, but not just control people, but have them oppress each other. And so I do think that that exists, like when you consider the way that we talk to each other, when you consider the way that we perceive light skin, dark skin, the way we perceive hair texture, the way we receive African spirituality, like we see a lot of that, those mind control and internalized colonialism facets rear their head. But the story of Willie Lynch was said to be a man who was very entrenched in slavery. So he was a very powerful plantation owner. And I want to say this took place in Jamaica, where he was renowned for being able to keep his slaves in control. And when the United States got wind that there was this man who just had this uncanny ability to keep people in control through a variety of means, they were very heinous, they were very cruel. He was then brought to the United States to help also indoctrinate and control the enslaved population that was up there. And so the Willie Lynch letters are said to be these string of letters that help to denote how you can break somebody's spirit to the point where they are enslaved and they like it, more or less.
Okay, so when you take that and you talk about breaking the spirit, you talk about breaking down humans, basically, and letting them almost a bit Stockholm syndrome type of situation. One of the things that we notice in our community is the lack of what is now termed or coined generational wealth. But basically, each generation seems to come along right now in our community, and they've got to start from scratch, And I saw you comment on having the importance of family bonds on wealth and building wealth, and the importance of your relationship with your family, and how that impacts being able to create that generational wealth. So let's get into that a little bit. Why is it important for you to have family bonds, or to develop and enhance and enrich your family bonds?
Yeah, so I think what we see a lot here in the Caribbean and our Caribbean communities, but I've been seeing it, I'll speak specifically about the Virgin Islands, is we'll have families that have, like a great surplus of land that's just been passed down the line. But as time goes on, the amount of land that that family has continues to dwindle. And here in the Virgin Islands, we have a situation where we have probate, right? Where our probate courts are blocked up for years at a time. And so if great grandma leaves her home to 11 children, and great grandma didn't ensure that her 11 children get along, and that there is some sort of like understanding and meaningful relationship, then what ends up happening is great grandmother puts these uh, 11 children in charge of the one property she has. And so obviously it continues to foster and fuel this contention around who deserves it, who worked harder for it, who could maintain it, as well as what do you do now with 11 people name on one property, you know? Like how do you move forward and ensure that everybody gets an equal share but also holds equal responsibility in the property tax and all of the other bills maintenance that may come up. But to take it further, if everybody has some sort of contention in their relationships with each other, you kind of open the door for an already complex situation to be almost unsolvable, right? Because nobody gets along, or the relationships that are there are very strained. And so we see a lot of that happens here in the Virgin Islands, where we don't spend enough time ensuring that we create meaningful relationships with our children. So our children end up moving away. Here locally, we call it brain drain, where they'll go to the United States and they'll, give all of their talents to the United States, create a life in the United States. And we find that when we don't take up enough space in our own communities, we allow other people who are not from here to take up space here. So we're seeing that happening, as well as we got to do better at ensuring that our children get along and to create relationships that are going to be healthy among our children. Because if we intend for them to steward this legacy moving forward, then we need to do the groundwork to make sure that our children have a meaningful relationship with each other, because they're going to be partners in upholding this legacy. And I think that oftentimes is not happening. And so we are getting a lot of property that's sitting in probate or just sitting derelict, because a lot of families can't really work together to solve the problems, because there's so much unspoken tension that exists within the family line. And specifically in the Virgin Islands, I know that to be a very big issue. And I think that it erodes our capacity to ensure that we continue to uphold the legacy, but that we also continue to take up space in our communities. So in a lot of ways, it just feels easier. I don't get along with my 3 other siblings, for instance. So let's just sell the property that Granny give us and let's just each go our separate ways. Oftentimes, the people you're selling that to is the people that ain't from here. And so we're continuing to give away our legacy, but also give up our place and our foothold in our communities.
And that's such an important point, because in Jamaica it's slightly different. But when you speak about probate in Jamaica, and there's some other islands like this as well, if Granny has some land, or Granny and grandfather had some land, right? They've passed, and they passed it to their kids. Their kids are living in the UK for whatever reason, or equivalent to the States, whatever. They go to create this life in the States or UK or wherever. Now, the kids don't have that bond with the family, so they don't go back home. And then what happens with that land is somebody else can come and just, park up on the land, and then that land is no longer yours. I don't know if it's the same kind of, obviously it's legal. There's legal aspects to it, but I don't know if it's the same there. And so that's why it kind of struck a nerve with me when you talked about that, because I see this so many times. So many times people will say, yeah, man, I got land back home. You don't have land back home. When was the last time you went back home, bro? Or sis, when was the last time you went back home? So it's important to maintain that family bond. And as it pertains to building generational wealth, of course, that's the foundation of everything, having land, having property, etc. Because another thing is, when you look at what would be the key markers of success on the islands, it's normally, yeah, man, they've got this big hotel. So as an example, in Jamaica, there's so many of these big US-based hotels that you on the face of it, you would say, oh my gosh, they're doing so well, it's so great, but it's almost terrible for the economy, because people come to the hotel, stay in the hotel, don't leave the hotel, spend the money in the hotel, obviously, and that money just goes back into the US system. And I know you speak about gentrification a lot, and how that, you're not necessarily a fan of gentrification. I know you say you're not anti it, but at the points where it's, I suppose, to the detriment of the country, you have to kind of speak out and have something to say in regards to that. So from a maintaining traditions and as you mentioned, maintaining traditions standpoint, what would you say? Actually, I've got a question. It's just come to me. Have you seen Diplo's new house?
Yeah.
Okay, so Diplo has done a video where he shows his new house, and it's very pretty. It's up in the hills in Jamaica, up in Portland, and so on. And there's a lot of kind of kickback where Jamaicans are saying, "Hold on, you had American architects and all of this different workforce that came from outside of the culture." And how is that really giving back? And it kind of made me look and think about what you were talking about when it came to the hurricanes, and how some of the houses have been built because it's in line with the hurricane, or with hurricane season that happens in the Caribbean over the years. And I wanted to talk a little bit when we get to like global warming, and why isn't it taken that seriously, and what are the impacts that you're seeing with regards to global warming in St. Thomas at the moment?
Sure. So to speak into what you were saying about Diplo and not employing local contractors and architects to build that house, that's exactly the problem. Like across the region, is we're seeing people. For instance, people will come to the Virgin Islands and they'll be, oh my God, it's paradise, it's beautiful. I want a sweet, beautiful little life for me and my family. But there's never any regard to, okay, how can I come to this community and give my talents to the community? Like what, as much as I intend on taking from the community, what do I intend on putting into the community? There's not a reciprocity spirit that exists there. And so we have a lot of people that come from the United States. We right now have an issue with our housing. We're in a housing crisis in the Virgin Islands. There is simply not enough homes to house everybody, and the homes that are available are often unaffordable. So you have people that are coming from the States and they can't afford the prices, and they're continuing to work in the United States. So there's no system of taxes being paid into here, or we'll have photographers that'll be brought down for weddings, like, or caterers that'll be brought down for weddings, instead of looking into our pool of very talented and brilliant entrepreneurs to see how they can help to stimulate the economy while they're here. And much like what you expressed, like in Jamaica, a lot of our hotels here are not owned by local people. And by local people, I mean Virgin Islanders, like native Virgin Islanders, because and I feel like I have to make that disparity, because we have people that'll move here and within 3 months they want to be known as local, but you're not local. Like 3 months is not enough time to be considered, in my opinion, a local. You're a resident, but that's kind of where the line ends. But they like to tote the notion of, oh, I'm a local business and this, that, and that. And it's just like, no. And the more we allow people to misrepresent themselves, the more we continue to see a hemorrhaging of our local population. Because if you have tourists from away that come in here for a destination wedding, oftentimes I find that there are people that are invested in the local community and do want to ensure that they support local businesses. But if you have Jack and Susie who just come here 3 months ago with their catamaran business, talking about they're a local business, then they tend to capture the business that true local people, real local people could be capturing, but for whatever reason are not, because you have this oversaturation of people that are not from here. And then again, because their businesses are based out of the United States, they're paying taxes back to their hometown of Utah, and we're not actually seeing a true circulation of money here from that. So there's that issue as well. And so I empathize with the Jamaicans. And I just saw a documentary that was talking about tourism in the Caribbean, and they specifically focused on Jamaica. And they talked about how all of those inclusive hotels are eroding the sale of the crafts, the handmade dolls and the woven baskets, and what should have been a stimulus to the economy has now just kind of sucked it dry, but it still takes away from Jamaicans' access to their beaches. So
So
all the benefits.
would you say then that that would be a lack of maybe foresight of the governments, where once upon a time it was Jamaica nice and so on, and whichever, include Barbados, wherever you want, but the foresight wasn't that, okay, Riu or whatever the holiday the hotel branch is not, because there's a lot of encouragement of not going outside of the resort. It's not safe. There's these warnings, etc., etc., etc. So by the time, if I'm a regular tourist, I'm going to be so scared to leave. that I'm not gonna, the locals are these dangerous savages that that will steal from me or rob me or kill me. So I think, what can be done about that though? How can you change that?
Well, I think that there is a way in which we're continuously reactive and we're not proactive. And so we want to solve problems in the here and now. So we have, um, let's say we need a children's hospital. I want to say there was this instance where there was a place in Jamaica a community in Jamaica that really needed a children's hospital. China comes in and they're all like, oh, you guys need a children's hospital and you need this big major roadway that's going to allow people from one side of the island to get to the next side of the island. So let we build it for you. And in exchange, you give us real estate. But the real estate we want the prime real estate that exists over here and it captures maybe like 3 beaches. The Jamaican government probably weighs, in their effort to ensure that they are thinking about, well, what's going to positively affect the most amount of people. They think to themselves, well, we really need that children's hospital, like we really need that roadway to encourage to encourage, like commuting across the island, to help stimulate the economy and this, that, and the other. And so they agree to it. And then 10 years down the line, China decides, all right, we're going to bust up this land. We're going to give it to this developer. We're going to have them develop this over here. And we're going to have them develop this, oil company over here. So that way we could excise the oil that we know is under the land, et cetera, et cetera. And so something that initially, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Something that was initially thought to be, okay, this is going to impact the most amount of people with the most amount of good, has now turned into something that feels really insidious. And like you were taken advantage of. Like you didn't see the what was going to happen down the line, right? And I think in a lot of ways we fall prey to a lot of these larger countries and colonial powers because they recognize that a lot of Caribbean countries are really trying to bolster economy and are in a lot of ways struggling. Like food insecurity in the Caribbean region has only grown with time, and it got worse during COVID. So we have a lot of real issues here, and then there are a lot of people that see our weaknesses and play off of those weaknesses in our desperation to create bigger, like better communities for each other. So I think that, and then I also think that we have a lot of people that um, get into political office and they want to stay in political office. So they make these quick and fast deals. So that way, it creates the appearance that, oh, okay, look what happened under my administration. Like look at the progression that took place here. But the people are not aware of all of the innuendo and like all of the ways in which that deal feels good now, but later on it don't feel as good, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. Now, one of the things you mentioned was the pandemic, and the pandemic gave way to a lot of global nomads. A lot of people that are just, oh, let me go to this specific paradise island and work from there. But it also impacted, I think, what people are not speaking about, what the governments are not talking about, is the mental health of people in particular. And I know this is something that you also speak very passionately about, with regards to mental health and so on. So I wanted you to, well, not wanted you to, let's discuss mental health and it's the importance of looking after your mental health, as far as, especially when things like pandemics or the situation that we're going through right now globally. We're looking at cost of living crisis. As you said, there's shortage of food, money to buy food, etc. So what's the mental health situation looking like on the Virgin Islands? Is it like everywhere else where currently nobody's really talking about it, but on the floor, on the streets, you can see it? You can see that people are struggling?
Yeah, we've definitely had an increase of people that are homeless in the Virgin Islands. I will also say that, so there's a multi-pronged system here. So we don't have mental health support here in the Virgin Islands unless you go to like a private therapist or whatever. There's no like in-home rehab or anything like that. No programs in place to support people with mental health. And so ultimately what happens is if your parents and your family can't afford to send you away to the States, you kind of get left to your own devices and oftentimes end up on the streets. And that's where people stay years on end. So there's that component to it. Something else that happens here is that people from the United States will have family members that are mentally ill and they can't necessarily control them. So they send them to the Virgin Islands. So at least if they're living on the street, they're living in a place where it's hot year round and they don't have to think about their family members freezing to death. So
Oh
we have
wow.
yeah, so we have that happening. Something else that happens because of our connection to the United States and that, like it's very easy to get here. We like to say that we don't have a passport. You don't need a passport to get here. A lot of times that tends to bring the behavior that we within our community don't subscribe to. So we have a lot more drug usage that's happening now. Because people are bringing, like their drugs and their habits with them. And so we're seeing an influx in people dabbling in the higher echelon drugs, like the fentanyl and the meth and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different things that are happening here, but largely we don't have any supports in place to support people that are struggling with mental health. We are also a community that's severely underinsured. So I think 60% of the Virgin Islanders don't have insurance because we just simply can't afford it, and we don't really have very many private options that if your job just don't happen to provide health insurance. I think we have one private option that will allow you as a private family to get that coverage, but I don't know that coverage is sprawling and supportive as you would under like a Cigna or United Healthcare. And so a lot of people just go without health insurance. And so if you have mental health problems and you need to go see a therapist, well, that's
Oh,
largely accessible to people. And then food here is very high. We have one of the highest electricity rates in the Western Hemisphere. Definitely one of the highest in the Caribbean for sure. And so the people here literally struggling to keep their heads above water while we have people that are moving here and buying up our land and opening businesses and being able to move easier through our communities because they have more resources.
so you
I'm sorry,
speak.
such a bleak picture today. I didn't mean
No,
to.
no, 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 no. We trust me. We're having fun as well. We're gonna have some fun as well, but we have to deal with seriousness. Like I said, it's not just bacchanal and party, and we gotta talk about some serious matters as well. Global warming. Global warming is not taken seriously across the Caribbean at all. Um, don't tell me this is freezing up. Hello?
You, I can hear you. You're frozen.
Don't worry. We'll carry on until yeah. Global warming is not taken seriously across the Caribbean at all. Why is that? And are you noticing any impacts of that over in the Virgin Islands?
Yeah, of course. So right now, the Virgin Islands is experiencing a really intense rain season, I would say, and it's off of the back of an extreme drought. So for a few years, the Virgin Islands, all three islands, were placed on an extreme drought warning. And then this year we've gotten more rain than I've seen in years, which is wonderful. But I estimate that this rain is going to be very short lived, and the drought that's coming after this is going to be very intense. So we have that happening with our weather and climate. They just put out a study today indicating that scientists are extremely concerned about the coral bleaching that they expect to happen in the Virgin Islands this summer, because our temperatures are already looking like that. Our sea surface temperatures are looking like that of July, August, and we're only in May, so that's a little bit scary. And so our coral plays such an important, vital role in our everyday life and in the health of our oceans and our ocean industry. Like here in the Virgin Islands, we've been trying to get, I think it's called our blue tourism, up and running, or our blue economy is what it's called, where we leverage more of like the ocean life and stuff like that in order to bolster our economy. So we've been talking about that a lot, but I wonder how much global warming is going to play a change in that. And then when you consider the hurricanes, like the hurricanes are only getting more intense. We're slated to have one of the most hyperactive seasons ever on record. NOAA just put out the most aggressive hurricane prediction sheet that they've ever put out in the history of the organization. And a lot of the models are pushing are a lot of the models suggest that a lot of these storms are going to track in the northeastern Caribbean. So this is the Virgin Islands, this is the BVI, this is Antigua, Barbuda. And so I think a lot of the people here are scared because we are also the same people that were hit by Irma, 2 weeks later, hit by Maria. And in a lot of ways, we have not recovered from that. And so I think a lot of us are feeling the anxiety of those impending storms, but also realizing that all of these newcomers that have come here are able to pack up and leave and go and, get to safe harbor. Whereas us, when that kind of weather come in, a Cat 5 come in, the ability to pack up and leave is just, you don't have it. Especially since the airlines just raised the tickets up to like $4,000 one way to get out of the Virgin Islands after, a storm is imminent. So you start to check the flights to get family out. You can't get family out because it's like $4,000. So you're stuck here. Whereas your counterparts who come down here because they love the island paradise and it's perfect and it's beautiful, have the leverage to get up and go and come back when everything's pristine and beautiful again.
It's definitely wild. I don't know if it's frozen over there. I can hear you, but the screen is frozen. Are you able to? Is there any movement on your side?
So I can see myself and I'm moving perfectly. I can't see you at all, but I can hear you well.
Okay, fine. Well, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna continue as long as because I think whatever it's getting a little bit technical, and I don't wanna restart the conversation. So let's let's continue. So what's important to me and also important to you is maybe getting the government to pay attention to the impact of global warming. And one of the things that you actually said on one of your posts is you realize it's not a sexy subject, but you've pretty much taken the mantle of actually discussing it and actually making people aware. Are people becoming, as part of your campaign, are people becoming more aware of things?
I don't think people, when I make climate change videos and global warming videos, I think they're my least watched and engaged with videos. Like, I think that for a lot of people, they feel like there's nothing they can do. And in a lot of regard, there really isn't. Like, there is no magic remedy to this. There is no medicine that's gonna come and like save the day or anything of the sort. Like, what's happened has happened. And in a lot of ways, us in the Caribbean we really haven't been a party to the global warming that's been taking place. The people that are in charge and the people that are making the decisions and are taking up the fossil fuels and stuff, those people don't exist here. And so we are the collateral damage of other people's frivolous decision making and frivolous greed. I will say that where we do play a role and why I continue to make the videos is because we have to prepare. And again, the story of the Caribbean region is that we are reactive and we are not proactive. And I think that we need to be reactive with this because in a region of the world where most of our food is imported, in the Virgin Islands, the percentage is, I think, a 98% importing rate for food. That's scary considering the fact that we just don't know what the future is going to hold. We don't know if there will be a time where the United States won't be able to send us food for whatever reason. And we're going to have to rely on our agriculture. But for a long time, our agriculture industry feels like it's been limping. And I know that I am not the only, this is not the only island dealing with this, right? Because there are a lot of things that our farmers across the region have to deal with, including competing with the supermarket prices, where the supermarkets could bring in this GMO, highly pesticided food for a fraction of the cost. And if we're talking about a Caribbean region where the cost of living here in a lot of ways are extremely high, expecting people to buy from farmers a head of lettuce that's $8 when they could go to the supermarkets and get it for $5 almost feels unfair, So I feel like we're in a rock and a hard place. And I think a lot of us are going to have to figure out whether we're going to be self-sustaining or not. And so that means like capturing your own water and growing your own food so you're not relying on the local farmer or the supermarket, or that you're able to create a system of bartering versus cash. but I just think that there are a lot of ways that we could prepare, or at the very least start having conversations about our infrastructure and the fact that a lot of our infrastructure does not support sea level rise.
100%. So tell me something, Gabrielle. Why don't you like the chair posse?
The chair pot. Oh, so in the village, I love the chair posse. I think it's a great idea, and I too would bring my chair, right? If I didn't want to be up in front of the stage. My problem with the chair posse is that sometimes they leave the chair section and they put their chair literally in the way where people who were supposed to be up by the stage dancing and having a good time are. And I feel like the problem with that is that it takes away from crowd participation. I
Mhm.
find incredibly dangerous because if shots bust out in the middle of the village and you're sitting down in your chair, you're going to get trampled. Or people are going to trip all around you and get hurt because you decided that you wanted to take your ugly atrocious chair and put it in the middle of the festivities when there is a whole place behind the stage further back where people put on their chair and it's fine. So I love the chair people. I too am going to be a chair person when I no longer want to stand, but I need us to be thoughtful of where we place these chairs.
Fair enough. I hear you. So you did Carnival, and Carnival was good. It looks as though Carnival was amazing. What's some of the main? So if I want to go to a Carnival in the Virgin Islands, which I haven't done yet, what are some of your main traditions?
So carnival, and one of the things that I think is really wonderful about our carnival is we are, I want to say, the only place in the Caribbean region where our entertainment, so we call it the village, and I think a couple other Caribbean islands may call it the village, but
Mhm.
for 5 nights straight on the island of, or 6 nights on the island of St. Thomas, you can come and hear some of the hottest Caribbean talent. So I'm talking like Jada Kingdom, Shantia, like Destra, Patrice Roberts, Marshall Montano for free. Our village
What?
free. You don't have to pay nothing to get in there. You just pay for your food and drink and come to free entertainment. I think,
Okay.
yeah. So there
You
was,
you know you sold it to me now.
I figured that's all we needed to hear. It's completely free, which I appreciate because it makes Carnival more accessible to people,
Mhm.
um, which I think is really important. And it also diversifies us from our Caribbean brothers and sisters. But we also have like food fair, which is amazing. You could see our local vendors come forward, our local food, our traditional drinks, our traditional candies. And so that's always a beautiful community event. We have the traditional parade. We have horse races now on the island of St. Thomas because they revitalized the horse track. So there's that. But the carnival, I can't speak for no other place, but carnival in the Virgin Islands, as you get closer to carnival, so in St. Thomas, our carnival is April. From February, you're starting to feel that carnival energy heighten. You're
Mhm.
starting to, there's like a energy shift that happens in the air. You're seeing the decorations go up. You're seeing, movement happen. People starting to put together the carnival parade floats, the costumes are advertising. And I think that's my favorite time of the year is how electric the energy feels, how there's like a level of camaraderie and community that tends to become strongest during that time, and that feels really generative for me. It's like food for the soul.
Fantastic. And speaking about the soul, Caribbean mystics. I
Yes.
told you, I'm scared of some of these stories that's gonna come out in this new season. Um, how did that start for you? Well, you're a mystic, and for those that don't know, and I've got somebody on live, which is a shame that we're having technical difficulties, but I know that they're on the Instagram. Explain to those lay people what a mystic actually is.
So uh, it's funny that you call me a mystic because I don't know that I say that outwardly very often. So I am a believer in all paths to God. Like I said, I manage a metaphysical shop. It's called Sage Sanctuary. It's located in Yacht Haven Grand in St. Thomas. And through that space, I've been able to really explore my own understanding of myself, of my why I'm here, of destiny and the things that happen around us. And so I'm a big believer in energy. I'm a big believer in spirits. I'm a big believer in the mind. and how the mind leverages belief systems to work for you or work against you. And so I would say that because I believe so deeply in spirituality, and I think that it's really hard to grow up in this region of the world and not believe in something otherworldly, because we grew up on the Jumbi stories, we grew up on the Coatfoot woman, Goatfoot woman, La Jabless, Sukunya. So we hear all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, you tend to believe it because you're hearing it from people that you trust. And in some instances, you even have your own experiences. So I started, when I was making content, one of the things I knew I wanted to make content on is folklore, myths, legends that come out to the Caribbean region, because that is what I feel really excited and enthused about. And so I started making this content, and I had a girl named Paulina Cricky reach out to me, and she was like, I have this passion project that I have been thinking about, and I've been looking for the perfect co-host and co-producer and, just co-creator. Um, and so I wanted to talk to you about it. So her and I got together, and it was the notion of this Caribbean Mystic podcast where we have people share their paranormal experiences. We add all the sound effects and everything to it, and we produce it, like put it up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. And I told her that the yes to everything, but the only way that I could fully say yes is if we ensured that there was a component of the podcast that was educational, where we
Right.
could talk and demystify, because I don't want to chase people away from their heritage, and I don't want to chase people away or scare people away from a relationship with, God or their ancestors because they hear a story that did that.
Mm-hmm.
um and a lot of our stories have so much like historical and cultural influence. I just felt like it was really important to have an informational perspective to it, so that way we were not doing harm. Like, it's important to me that we leave people better than we find them. So she was on board with that, and we are now in season 3. We have a bunch of stories, and so if anyone wants to listen, it's Caribbean Mystics podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, basically any podcast streaming platform. Season 3 is coming out in August, and I'm super excited. All of them are true supernatural stories from the Caribbean, and I stand very strongly on my product. So all you have to do is listen to one, and then you're hooked.
100%. Now you have a strong relationship with the bay tree and the bay leaf
Yeah,
and
we
the
love bay.
Caribbean. Sorry,
We love bay leaf.
you're 100%. The Caribbeans do. So I was looking at this and I was thinking, wow, um, the inclusion of it in food, absolutely. In Jamaica, we have a thing called bay rum. You don't drink. I don't know if you guys have bay rum over there. You don't drink it, but it helps your ailments. If you got flu, you rub it on your skin, you inhale it, and so on and so forth. Why have we got such a strong relationship with the bay tree in the West Indies?
We do. The bay leaf is like, to me, that's the smell of the West Indies. You
Hmm.
know, when you consider like, oh, what does the Caribbean smell like? To me, it smells like bay leaf. Because it's one of the things I really enjoy about bay leaf is it's connected to our cuisine. It's connected to our like natural remedies. It's connected to our spirituality. And so bay leaf is one of those herbs that have such a like
Hmm.
multi-dimensional respect in this region that like I can't talk about it higher. Like, I absolutely love bay leaf.
Absolutely, and we do too. But do you like bay leaf more than hot pepper sauce?
I do like bay leaf more than hot pepper sauce. Ever since hot one, I've been like, ooh, I don't know if I could get back into hot sauce anytime soon, because it was hard. It was
Read why
hard.
so?
Huh?
Why was it hard to get back into hot pepper sauce?
Because
Because you had so much.
yeah, like when you film in for hot ones, you're filming multiple interviews a day. So you're
Oh gosh.
yeah, and so when you're doing the show, a lot of people don't consider that like you're eating 10 different hot sauces back to back with varying heat levels. So we had like hot sauces that had like the Trinidad scorpion pepper, which has a crazy amount of Scoville level. we had the habanero peppers, you know, like we had the Carolina Reaper in some of them. And these are some of the hottest peppers in the world. And you kind of have to go through that one interview, and within an hour time, you're into your next interview. Sometimes you're doing like 3 interviews a day. So all you're really eating for the day is like wings and hot sauce, which you could imagine what that did to your stomach.
Mhm.
It was hard. It was hard. Them hot. We have some hot sauces here in the region.
So, who was your favorite guest on Hot Ones?
Oh, you're gonna get me in trouble. Let me think. Let me
Okay,
think.
what was the most interesting one?
Um,
Okay, let me try and make it simple for you then, so that you don't get in trouble. Cause I don't want you to, I don't want favoritism. Who had the most outlandish reaction then to a hot pepper?
Iran Thomas. Definitely Tiran. I think he came into it though saying, you know, I'm not a pepper man, and so when we started, he was doing really good, and then as we got further and further in, him and I both just kind of struggled. Like it was very hard. It was like early in the morning. It was very hard, and I would say he was like the biggest struggle for me.
So
But he got
you
through. So kudos to Tiran. He was able to muster through the heat.
Well, even when, so you don't build up any kind of resistance to it. So, we're filming day one. All right, cool. You've gone through several takes, and then you get to, I don't know, day 8, the 8th episode or whatever. You still struggle, or it should be cool for you now. Your body should be like, yeah, man, I'm not in this.
So we filmed most of the episodes in a week's time.
Oh
So
gosh.
day 8, and by week's time, I mean like from a Tuesday to a Friday.
Oh.
So yeah, so there was no time for your body to build up tolerance. And so you just kind of had to power through. You know, you had to kind of like figure it out, come up with tips and tricks. How soon after I eat this particular sauce do I need to have a swig of milk? It was, but it was a really great experience though. You know, like it was an awesome experience. And then a part of Hot Ones this season is that I was able to make these Did You Know videos that showcase elements of like our Virgin Islands culture and history to the people that were watching. And that was really fun because we got to showcase Virgin Islands culture in a larger platform. Or I personally got to, because Tempo has such a big following and there's such a well-known regional brand.
Mhm.
That felt really good to be able to talk so eloquently about the Virgin Islands and all the ways that the Virgin Islands is just wonderful.
No, and kudos to you, because I have seen some of those Did You Know posts, the ones that you posted on your social media, and I think it's fantastic. It's also fantastic that you got the opportunity to do that with Hot Ones, the Caribbean edition, which means that the exposure once again, and it goes along with your pattern of your personality, that it seems is that, fun but also education as well. And
Yeah.
I love what you said about being able to leave people better than when you met them, you know, and to imprint certain things. And certainly from this conversation that I've had with you, we people that have sent me messages are definitely enlightened, a little bit more enlightened about the Virgin Islands, and obviously the challenges that you're encountering, but also the fact that you're standing and saying, look, this isn't acceptable, people, let's look at what's going on and let's try to make a difference. Because it's so very easy for people to be passive, and
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to be, super. Oh no. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what's happening here, but the screen's gone crazy. I don't mind as long as you're still here. But
Yeah.
what I was saying is, um, you don't have to be super. Hey, we're back.
Look at us.
We reached. We
I
reached.
love
Oh, give me a
this.
spot. Give me a spot. Give me a spot. Hey, we're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. All right. Yes, fantastic. There are people saying they can hear us and etc. Yo, big up to Apple and Apple products, car. We nearly never make it true, but we'll make it. We'll make it. So I was saying, it's important for people to realize in this day and age that we can still stand up, we can still make a stance against the powers that be, because we're not just gonna get fully dictated to and told, you must do it this way. And it's, again, very important for us to look and have the vision to see, well, hold on, it hasn't worked in the past, but we know if we do things slightly different, we can make a difference in the future. So I have to definitely thank you for that, Gabrielle, sorry, it's my, I tend
No,
to say
I always try to impart on my community that it's actually super important to have opposing opinions.
that.
It's super important to ensure that you have people in the room that have ideas that may not always mesh with the other people in the room, right? Because this is where we're able to engage with other perspectives. This is where we're able to learn from other people. This is an opportunity for us to have the person that may see, 10 years down the line that, hey, this all sounds good here, but I'm thinking through this vein, right? And to pull up something that we may not have considered that may change the entire conversation completely. And so my intention is never to create an echo chamber. It's always to create a community in which we could just have open, honest, and respectful discourse. No matter
No, that's fine. Sorry?
no matter where you're coming from.
100%. And I want to talk about butterfly season. Favorite season over there. Has butterfly season finished now, or is it just...
I feel like butterfly season is like closing up. I feel like butterfly season here does be around the springtime mostly. And I find out when it gets super hot, the butterflies go away. And we already talk about how hot it's been, and I think it was like 104 the other day. So yeah. So the butterflies, I think, are starting to diminish. But butterfly season is one of my favorite seasons in the Virgin Islands, because it's when all of the butterflies come out of their cocoons, and they're literally out in the thousands. And it's all of these beautiful mixings of like the yellows and the white butterflies, and they're like flying around. And it could be a really spiritual experience, to be honest, to just see them like maneuver around you, and they like almost dance, especially if you're in a very like wooded area, or there's like a long like prairie with like a bunch of like guinea grass and stuff. It's a really beautiful sight to see that. And it's nice because I feel like when I was younger, I didn't see butterfly season as like packed as it is now. But in recent years, I've seen like an influx of butterflies, which is absolutely gorgeous. The best place for butterfly season, though, is St. Croix. St. Croix, I went to Point Udall during butterfly season, and it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life. Thousands of butterflies all around you, completely just left to their own devices, like just very people friendly as well, because they're used to visitors going to Point Udall. So 10 out of 10 recommend.
Fantastic. So what is the plan next for Gabrielle Querrard? What's next? What's coming up next?
I have some projects underway that I'm in collaboration with. So we've been, so I have some stuff like that. I don't know how much I could say because it's not set in stone. I am super excited because I have a children's book coming out. Um, yes, I'm very excited. I have a children's book coming out. I'm hoping it'll be out by the end of the year, but I'm not entirely sure. So, um, it's with the illustrator. So, and that takes time, probably more than the actual writing of the book. So I have that going on. I just dropped my merch. So I created shirts that said, "You can't love the Virgin Islands culture if you don't love the Virgin Islands people." I have another one that says gentrification mashing up the place. So I have a few different shirts out that I'm super excited about. Season 3 of Caribbean Mystics is going to be dropping in August, late August. Very excited about that. We have stories from Santo Domingo, Puerto Rico, Tortola, and then of course the Virgin Islands. We are open to any other islands. So if you or somebody have a paranormal story you'd love to share in the podcast, first check out a podcast, because I promise you're going to fall in love. And then come and hit me up on my social media.
Fantastic. And we definitely will try and hit you with some stories. What is your favorite story? So I have been listening. I'm not gonna lie, I've definitely been involved. But tell me, can you share with me briefly your favorite story so far? Maybe favorite's the wrong word, but one that you want to share with us.
Yeah. So let me find out. All of them are good. I would say that one of them that really stands out to me is So there, so season 2, episode 1, there was a story by a friend of mine named Natalie, and she was talking about her childhood home and how when she was younger she was very susceptible to like energies, but her parents didn't necessarily sway her one way or the other. um, they kind of just led her to her own devices. And there was a tree that used to be in the backyard of the apartment that they were staying in, and she started calling the tree Grandmother Willow. And so every day her and her little brother, her older brother, would go and play out by the tree, and there was something inside of her that felt like the tree was sad. And so she'd go in her parents' medicine cabinet and she would pull out, like band-aid stuff to put onto the roots of the tree to see how she could support the tree. um and so as time went on, the energetic activity at the home started ramping up. So she would be in a room by herself, and there would be like a shadow casted onto the wall, and she would be facing the wall talking to the shadow, but in whispers. And her parents would walk in and see her and kind of interrupt her to be like, "What are you doing?" And then the shadow would move, and she would be back, not really knowing what they were talking about, almost like she was in a daze. Um, and there was one night in particular where she had gone to sleep, and she woke up in the middle of the night and she felt like there was this darkness inside of the room. So she gets out of bed, she goes to her parents' bedroom, she slides into bed between them. They ask her why she's there. She explains, and her parents are basically like, there's nothing in the house, you're okay. All of a sudden, their TV turns on and it's white noise, like the staticky white noise. So the mother starts to be like, she starts to talk out loud and is like, "Hey, spirit, leave. We don't want you here. This isn't your home." And so Natalie tries to tell her mother, like, "You can't talk to the spirits like that," because they get upset. The parents don't listen to her. They think this is normal, like childhood banter. A couple days later, they're inside of the living room and they're watching the TV in their living room, and there's a glass um, center table in front of them as they're watching TV, and the TV automatically shuts off. And so the mother starts, talking and being like, "Spirit, leave, you don't belong here," whatever, whatever, trying to like shoo whatever the energy was that they were feeling in the room. And the glass table ends up caving in on her foot and completely shattered on her mother's foot. After a few experiences of that, the family ended up leaving. But years later, a guy approached her father and was basically like, "Hey, like, I live in this new apartment and there's some weird stuff happening. Do you know anything about this home?" Long story short, the father discovers that this man that's just approached him about this home has moved into the home that they were living in when all of this was taking place. So he starts to do research on the land, and he discovers that that location by Mandal in St. Thomas was a place where there was like an Indian burial ground. And so in doing research on like indigenous practices, they found that sometimes the spirits live in the trees. And like that feeling of like sadness she was feeling off of the tree, she was feeling the energies from the spirits of the land that were basically conversing with her because she was a child and she was open to it. So I felt like that was really interesting. But we also really like out there stories and create like mermaid stories, like alien stories. So there's like a lot here.
I think one, my brain's letting me down, but you mentioned somewhere you spoke about aliens, and you spoke about something like there's a belief that we're all aliens, or something. There was something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, I may be misquoting. And I love that. I'm here for that. I'm here for the paranormal. I'm also here for the spiritual, because as a people, we're spiritual people, and I think that's
Yeah.
part of our tradition, which you quite rightly mentioned before. Christianity did almost demonize. Well, it did demonize it and say, away it goes. Um, I'm so glad we're moving again and people can see the movements, because there's one particular person I was watching this live that speaks about spirituality, speaks about energy. How important is it? How important is energy? And what does energy mean to you?
Yeah, I feel like energy is everything, and it's very important that like we have a relationship with energy, our own, with the energy of the people we keep around us, the energies of your home, the energies of the land that you're on. um, because there is, I think, a whole unseen unspoken about world that exists just around us, that we're constantly engaging with, but don't quite know that we're engaging with them. And I think energy is important for a lot of reasons, but more so, I don't think, I think that we walk around in a space of disempowerment, and we constantly feel like we're not good enough and we're unworthy and this, that, and the other. And I feel like when you get to a place where you have a connection with your energy, it kind of transforms that, because the we that we are now, it is my belief that we've been here thousands of times before. Like the energy we are now is like championship energy that we've continued to research, surface, and be resilient over and over and over again. There's a reason why, when you talk about destiny, there's billions of people in the world. There are thousands of places I could have been born in, but I was born on a little 32 square mile island in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. And my family has been connected to this space for hundreds of years. Like there's a destiny thread that's tied into that, not only because, it connects me and it's a sense of belonging, but it also imbibes an energy of responsibility to this land and to the people here. Like I have ancestors buried into the soil, and so there should be a connection with the land. There should be that energetic, like resonance and almost reverence for the energies around us, because I can feel it. There are places that I go here, like when I go like Frenchtown, which is a place where a lot of French people, which is my heritage, came from in St. Thomas. I feel an energy there that's old, and it also feels like belonging. Like this is home for me. Even I didn't grow up in Frenchtown. And I feel that deeply about St. Thomas, like in general, where it's just like I walk through the streets and I feel a sense of like I belong here, you know? But I think that there's an energy that's attached to that. And I think that it's important that we create our own energetic like understanding, so that way we can see the places in which we feel like we belong. People have come here all the time and they say that I don't know what, I feel drawn to this space. I feel drawn to this island. I feel drawn to these people. And they stay here for the rest of their lives. And I think that when they are imbibed into the community and they do care about the people, I think that that's beautiful. And so there has to be a reason why they have that energetic resonance, why they could go to a strange place with a culture they're unfamiliar with and feel a sense of home that they didn't feel in like the middle of Kentucky. And I think, like I think that there's something there to that. So energy is very important. The energy you keep around you oftentimes lends itself to the trajectory of where you ultimately go, and the decisions you make and the things you think about the world and about yourself. So I'm a big believer that, we need to become more imbibed with our energy.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I've had conversations with people regarding similar things to energy, or regarding why I care so much about things. Like, for instance, this particular conversation with you, I find so enthralling and important to have. But and other things, and I've had people ask me, "Why do you care?" And I can't necessarily find the words, but I care because I feel it's me. It's part of me. This whole trajectory that I'm on is part of me and what we do, etc. So it's great to meet like-minded people as well that have that understanding of energy, have that understanding of a mission that is greater than just your own personal, your personal space or whatever it may be. So thank you so much for your time. Really, really, really appreciate it. And I want to say all the best with all of your endeavors. Please, please, please stay in contact with us so we know what's going on. If for nothing else, Gabrielle, next year we're going to be at Carnival.
Yeah,
it's free. It's free. I'm coming for the freeness.
Tell me when you're down here, and then we can hang out. That would be awesome.
100%.
Vlog or something together.
100%. All right, so thank you so much. Really appreciate this. We're gonna be watching everything that you do. We're definitely gonna get some hot sauce, and it's been a pleasure. I'll speak to you again soon.
Have an incredible day.
And you. And you have some word for WAPA? Is it WAPA? WAPA?
I don't want to say anything mean to them because I have to believe maybe that. I just don't know. I'm trying to meet them with love because I wonder if complaining helps. So
WAPA, we love you.
We love you so much.
All right, you have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.